𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓲𝓼 and a very good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Welcome to the weekly Sunday Pūjā in Unison and Dhamma sharing online, an initiative of 𝓟𝓷𝓷's Council of Malaysia and is jointly hosted by MSBS and DBV. It's certainly good to see all of you once again on this online platform. Today is the 29th of October 2023. To begin today's puja, let's compose our minds, compose ourselves, and reflect as I read out the offerings in English. Offering of lights. May we offer these candles burning brightly out of deep respect and veneration to our enlightened Master the Buddha. May these lights symbolically guide us to the light of Dhamma, which dispels the darkness of greed with the light of generosity, the gloominess of hatred with the light of love, and the darkness of ignorance with the light of wisdom, through the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Offering of joss sticks and incense. May we offer these joss sticks and incense our deep respect and veneration to our blessed Master the Buddha. May the fragrance of these joss sticks and incense be pleasing to the gods and devas. May our good deeds be like the fragrance of these joss sticks, cultivating compassion, patience, tolerance, and understanding, and love towards all living beings. Offering of water. May we offer this water to symbolize our aspiration to cultivate the virtue of calmness, clarity, and purity. Let it remind us to diligently cleanse ourselves in our spiritual defilement and delusion through the cultivation of generosity, compassion, and wisdom. Offering of flowers. These flowers too, we offer our deep respect and gratitude to our compassionate Master Buddha. These flowers, sweet, beautiful, and choice, are clustered at the feet of our noble Master. Beautiful as they are now, they will soon be passing of time, wilt and fade and be cast away, reflecting dust on this very nature of unsatisfactoriness, impermanence, and soullessness. Let us tread the path shown by the Buddha for the eradication of sufferings here and now.
Homage Vandana. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinna veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kame sumiccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musawada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Surameraya majja pamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijjacarana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati satta dewa manussanang buddho bhagavati. Swakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko ehipassiko opanayiko paccattang veditappo vinyohiti. Supatipanno bhagavato sawaka sangho Ujupatipanno bhagavato sawaka sangho Nyanya patipanno bhagavato sawaka sangho Samici patipanno bhagavato sawaka sangho Yadidang cattari purisa yugani atta purisa puggala Esa bhagavato sawaka sangho ahuneyo pahuneyo dakkineyo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punyakketang lokasati.
Vandami cetiyam sabbam sabbatani supatititang saririkadatu mahabodhim buddharupang sakalam sada yassamule nisinnova sabbari wijayam akka patto sambanyutam satta Vande tam bodhipadapang ime ete mahabodhi lokanatena pujita ahampite namassami bodhi raja namattute ganasarappadittena dipena tamadangsina 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓵 sambuddham pujayami tamonudang ganda sambara yuttena dupena ham sugandina pujaye pujani yang tang puja bhajana muttamang adivasetu no bante Paniyam parikappitang anukampang upadaya patiganhatu muttamang adivasetu no bante bojanang parikappitang anukampang upadaya patiganhatu muttamang adivasetu no bante Gilana paccayang imang anukampang upadaya patiganhatu muttamang vannaganda guno petam etang kusuma santating Pujayami munindassa Siripada Saroruhe Pujemi Buddhang Kusumena Nena Punyena Mettena Chahotu Mokkang Puppang Milayati Yathai Dang Me Kayo Tatayati Vinasa Bhavang Akasatta cha bummatta devanaga mahittika punyang tam anumojitva chiram rakkantu loka sasanang Akasatta cha bummatta devanaga mahittika punyang tam anumojitva chiram rakkantu desanang Akasatta cha bummatta devanaga mahittika punyang tam anumoditva chiram rakkantu mam paramti Devo vassatu kalena sassa sampatti hetu cha Pito bhavantu loko cha Raja bhavantu dhammiko Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yava nibbana pattiya Kayena vacha cittena pamadena mayagatam Acayang kamame bante buri panya tathagata Kayena vacha cittena pamadena mayakatang Acayang kamame dhamma sandittika akalika Kayena vacha cittena pamadena mayakatang Acayang kamame sangha supatipanna anuttara
Karaniya matta kusalena yantang santang padang abisamecha sakko uju cha suju cha suvacho cha samudu anatimani santu sakko cha subaro cha appakicho cha sallahu kavutti Santindriyo cha nipakho cha appagabbo kulesu ananugito nacha kuddang samachare kinchi yena vinyu pare upavadeyu sukino va kemino hontu sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta ye kechipana bhutatti tasava tavarava anavasesa digava ye mahantava machchima rassakanugatula dittava yeva aditta Yecha dure vasanti avedure Uta vasambhave siva sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta Nabaro parang nikuppe sabbeta nati manyeta kattacinang kanci biaro sanapatigasanya nanyamanya sadukha micceya mata yatani yang puttang ayusa eka putta manurakhe evang pisabba bhutesu manasang bhavaye aparimanang mettang ca sabba lokasming manasang bhavaye aparimanang uddang addo ca tiriyanca asambadang averang asapattang tittang carang nisinnova sayanova yavatassa vigata mitto etang sating aditteya brahmametang viharang idamahu ditting ca anupagamma silava dassanena sampanno kame suvinaya geddang nahi jatu gappaseyang punaretinti etena saccavajjena sottite hotu sabbada etena saccavajjena sottite hotu sabbada etena saccavajjena sottite hotu sabbada. By this declaration of the truth, may we all be safe at all times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, Sister Mengsi and Sister Chukan, for today's Sunday Pūjā. Today we have Brother Ghatikara Loo to share on what kind of Samadhi are you in. So to all meditators out there, do tune in. Over to you, Brother Loo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brother Terence, for your kind introduction. A very good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. I'm indeed very happy this morning that I'm able to be here to share the Dhamma with you again this morning. Okay, so before we begin with our Dhamma discussion and sharing this morning, let us first of all put our palms together, and pay our highest and deepest homage and respect to the Buddha, the Blessed One, whom through his effort and sacrifice he has rediscovered the path to liberation, and that is enabled us to practice the true Dhamma towards liberation. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, a very good morning again, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. For the Dhamma discussion this morning, I've actually selected a topic, or an area, in the Dhamma, which I think, is very interesting, and it is of much interest, especially to meditators. And it's, of course, it is actually a subject that is actually subject to much debate as well, because of the different interpretations and by the different schools of Buddhism. Okay, and the primary sutta that I'm going to be making reference to, is actually extracted from the numerical discourses, the book of numerical discourses, which is 𝓟𝓾𝓷𝓷 Nikaya, and this is actually from the book of Force, and is sutta number 4.41. Okay. And as you know, this AN 4.41, the primary focus of this sutta is actually in respect of the area of Samādhi, and Samādhi, as you know, it is actually a Pali term, that's often translated as concentration, and And this is very much because of the influence, by literature that's actually written subsequent to the Pali Canon, the post-canonical literature. For example, like 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷, they actually prescribe certain practices, of Samādhi, that actually somehow has influenced our interpretation of this Samādhi, as concentration. But of course, if you read the suttas, Samādhi actually, as described by the Buddha, is very much not so much on concentration on one single object, but it is very much composure, the collectedness and unification of mind, in respect of what we contemplate and what we observe, right? In terms of sankharas. So this is, of course, something that that is because of the influence by literature such as 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷. That's why Samādhi has been translated as concentration. If you read the sutta translations by many of the translators, concentration, somehow inevitably, is being used, as the translation for Samādhi. But of course, I prefer the word composure and unification of mind. And of course, Samādhi, actually. It actually constitutes a very, very critical and essential, and even pivotal, component, in our Dhamma practice. For example, if I may share with you, for example, like for example, the 7 factors of enlightenment. If you can recall the 7 factors of enlightenment, for example, it starts with mindfulness. Then there's Dhamma Vichaya, investigation of the Dhamma. There's also the energy, rapture, and tranquility. Followed by what? Followed by Samādhi, and of course, then the last one is equanimity, upekkha. So you can see, Samādhi is actually one of the 7 factors of enlightenment that the Buddha has actually taught. In order for us to even attain any enlightenment, even to become a Sotapanna, you need to actually have these 7 factors of enlightenment. And of course, Samādhi is actually, one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. And if you look at, for example, like the 5 spiritual powers, the 5 spiritual faculties, that the Buddha has taught. What we have is actually like Saddha, Virya, right? Sati, Samādhi, and Panya. Saddha is what? Saddha is actually faith. Virya is actually effort. Saddha, Virya, Sati, mindfulness, and Sati itself leads to Samādhi, which is actually the composure of mind, and Panya. So if you look at it, these 5 spiritual faculties or 5 spiritual powers which are important for us to actually, that lead us into liberation and nibbana. This, you see, Samādhi itself, again, it actually constitutes a very strong, important building blocks, of the 5 spiritual faculties. So as you can see, what we can see, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and and also 5 these spiritual faculties, and also for example, like the the factors for to build psychic powers, like what I actually talked about a few weeks ago, about the building blocks of spiritual power. What do you have? This building blocks for the development of spiritual power. It is very much it actually requires this power of Samādhi, that will actually help us to actually build, for example, like the passionate enthusiasm, the energy, in terms of single-mindedness and investigation. All these are the building blocks, right? The 4 building blocks for us to develop psychic power. What must you have? You must have Samādhi first, before you can develop these 4 building blocks. So you see, Samādhi actually constitutes a very, very important component, in our Dhamma practice. And of course, ultimately, this Samādhi, the right Samādhi, Samma Samādhi, actually is actually the 8th factor, in the Noble Eightfold Path. What we know, right? This Noble Eightfold Path is a path that we actually practice, that actually enables us to actually attain any enlightenment or towards liberation. You must have Samma Samādhi, and that itself it leads actually from right effort, and then you actually practice the 4 foundation of mindfulness, in the in the Samasati, and then once you have the mindfulness, then it itself it leads to Samadhi. And when Samadhi itself, once you have this Samadhi, then it actually then you need to actually apply wisdom, to actually investigate sankhara, in terms of the intrinsic nature of sankhara. Then it leads to what? It leads to, again, right view, right view, not in the supramundane, not in the worldly sense, but in the supramundane sense, that you're able to see things, that there's actually no intrinsic self to it, that everything, itself, is actually dependently arisen, and because of that, it becomes otherwise, it becomes like it's something that's really unsatisfactory. It's like an alien, like a boil, like a dart, that somehow, it's nothing to be clung to at all, So that's why you see Samadhi itself is actually the very basic building block, in our Dhamma practice, But having said all this in terms of the importance of Samadhi, of course, nowadays, it's also very strange, that I often hear, perhaps, some members of the Dhamma family, they actually, they actually have informed me, that based on what they have learned from the teachers, that Samadhi itself is not important, because as Samadhi in the Noble Eightfold Path, the Buddha says Samadhi refers to the 4 jhanas, right? So what happens is, many of these perhaps friends that I have in the Dhamma fraternity, they have informed me, that actually these jhanas, as what the Buddha actually mentioned in terms of the Samma Samadhi, right, the right samadhi, or what people say, right concentration, it's actually not necessary, because jhanas, are just like high levels of concentration, that you practice. Yeah, it helps you, but it's not necessary, because once you practice jhana, what you will just help you to be reborn, perhaps in the Brahma world, and it doesn't actually facilitate, in you achieving the different realizations, or it doesn't actually sharpen or improve your wisdom, So there is this school of thought that says that, Samadhi is not important at all, you don't need to have this jhana, and what you need to have are just like maybe Khanika Samadhi, or momentary concentration, or Upachara Samadhi, something like very somehow close to jhana, but not really jhana, So you don't need to have jhanas, to actually have to actually achieve liberation or awakening, So that is the view, one school of thought, and of course, there are also other schools of thought that actually teach, yeah, jhana is actually important, but to actually practice towards liberation, the jhana you practice, you should just observe whatever that arises and ceases. When it comes, you just know that it has arisen. Then once it disappears and ceases, you just know that it has disappeared. Do not actually be involved in it. Do not actually contemplate on it. You just need to sit there and just watch it as it comes, as it goes, as it comes, as it goes. Do not have to be actively involved in anything. Just be passive about it and just watch it come and go, and you just have to just realize that things are impermanent, and anicca, and that itself is good enough for you to attain liberation. So that is another school of taught, another school, there's another teaching that has been taught, in some schools, and of course there are also some schools that actually teach samadhi, as okay, they actually say that yes, you need to develop the jhanas, but of course they actually practice jhanas in such a way, that you should actually practice jhana to an extent, where you can see the nimitta, the light, as you practice. For example, you may be focusing your attention, maybe at the tip of your nose, or a certain object, that you actually focus intently on, to the exclusion of everything else, until you see the nimitta light arise. and you need to actually enter into this light, and make it, sustain it, and make it stronger, and make it more, to augment it, to make it stronger, bigger, such that you yourself enter into this light, and you become oblivious to everything else, that all your five sense doors are cut off, and you only percipient of that nimitta itself, and that itself, actually they call it as jhana, so that is another school of teaching, that some schools of Buddhism actually teach. So you can see from here, a lot of this interpretation of jhana is very much influenced by what? Influenced by Visuddhimagga. For example, when you say to practice, to actually attain the nimitta, that itself, it's actually because of influence by this Visuddhimagga. And the earlier example that I gave, where the people where they actually claim that jhana is not important, it's just something that is you develop, and it actually only brings you to the Brahma world. It doesn't lead you to anything. That itself is also influenced by Visuddhimagga, because their notion of jhana is that is this Visuddhimagga jhana, that you actually see the nimitta. That's why they say that jhana is not important. It doesn't lead you to liberation. It is because of this these different perceptions or different views, of jhana that has actually been promulgated by different teachers, by different meditators. Just that somehow we find that this nowadays the Buddhist fraternity is actually very much fragmented, and divided, by these different schools that have different ideas and different notions and views of what jhana is, and whether samadhi is really important. Some say samadhi is not important, because they're influenced by this Visuddhimagga jhana, and they say, oh, it's not important to cultivate all these nimitta. That's why they say, samadhi is not important, so, so now we have a situation where the Buddhist, the Buddhist fraternity, is very much fragmented, as to, whether jhana is actually necessary, whether samadhi needs to be practiced, and even if you hold the view that jhana or samadhi is important, then the question here is, how should you practice Samma Samadhi, as taught by the Blessed One, in order for us to attain liberation? What exactly is jhana? How should you practice jhana in order for you to attain liberation, the different stages of liberation? This is actually a very important consideration for us, because we are actually at the crossroad now, where we are being bombarded by a lot of these teachings, from different teachers. It's like we are so perplexed and confused, right? And it's like going to a supermarket. You don't even know. For example, you want to buy a certain product. You go into a supermarket. You've got so many products on the shelves. Some are local products, some are imported. With different ingredients. And some, and people. Different people have claims that, oh, this is good or that is good, and you are actually a bit confused, and perplexed as to, what I should actually select, or what I should actually select, in terms of your final decision. Very much like the kalamas, right? Different teachers tell them different things. Different teachers, that what is actually wholesome teaching or what is not wholesome teaching, and some they disparage others, and some, most of them claim that, or even all of them claim that, their only their teachings are right, the others are wrong. They're actually heresies, and and they're all wrong teachings, and they all self-proclaim their teachings are right. So we are very much like kalamas, as to the kalamas, right, during the Buddha's time. We are a bit perplexed and confused as to, how should we actually approach this subject of Samma Samadhi, where the Buddha actually teaches that, Samma Samadhi actually are the four jhanas. So we are actually in a situation where we actually need to be very clear, what the Buddha has taught in the suttas, in terms of how we should actually practice, jhana, as well as in terms of, how we should actually develop this Samma Samadhi to the extent that we are able to, attain liberation. That's why we nowadays, like even in some schools, they actually tell us, or tell me, that actually what the Buddha taught in terms of, the four jhanas in Samma Samadhi, that is the Buddha standard. do you believe that? They actually told me that that's the Buddha standard because, you know, he's a Sammasambuddha, you know. So that's why he actually teaches that, you know, the 4 jhanas important, you know, for liberation. But we are not, we don't aspire for Buddhahood, you know. So and we are not, you know, we are not like the Buddha, you know. So for us to achieve liberation, you know, we don't need to practice jhana, but we just need to have maybe Khanika Samadhi, Upachara Samadhi, you know, which, by the way, these terms are not even taught by the Buddha, you know. These terms are actually, you know, taken, you know, from Visuddhimagga, you know. So the Buddha never even talked about Khanika Samadhi, Upachara Samadhi. The Buddha only taught about jhana. So you see how dangerous it is that we actually try to, you know, make our own judgments and opinions into what the Buddha has taught in terms of jhana, and we form our opinions, you know, that, oh, you know, that's actually the Buddha standard, you know. Well, we are not the Buddha, so, you know, we don't have to really practice jhana. So actually, I was quite surprised to hear that, but that's how it is right now, you know. Our Buddhist fraternity is very much fragmented. So perhaps I should just start off, you know, by sharing with you, you know, this sutta, you know, from this Samyutta Nikaya, you know, this connected discourses of the Buddha, you know, and this is actually from SN 16.13, where it recorded a conversation between the Buddha, you know, and there's a Venerable Mahakassapa, you know, and there was one day, you know, this Venerable Mahakassapa actually posed a question to the Buddha, the Blessed One, and he actually asked the Buddha, he said, Bhante, you know, Venerable Sir, you know, what is the reason, what is the cause? Why formerly there were fewer training rules, but more bhikkhus were actually established in final knowledge. Means there were more bhikkhus who actually became arahants, you know, but there were actually much fewer training rules, you know, compared to now, you know, where the Buddha has established so many training rules, you know, in the Vinaya, you know, but you know, increasingly there are fewer and fewer bhikkhus who achieve arahantship, you know. So that's why this Mahakassapa, you know, actually asked the Buddha, why is this so? You know, previously there were, you know, much fewer rules that the Buddha actually had to, put in place, you know, but you know, there were actually more monks or more bhikkhus who actually attained arahanthood, you know. So compared to now, the Buddha actually established many more, you know, rules, you know, in the Vinaya, you know, but he finds that increasingly, you know, there are fewer and fewer bhikkhus, you know, who actually attain a final liberation. See, and let's see what the Buddha actually responds. The Buddha actually responds by saying that the true Dhamma does not disappear all at once in the way a ship sinks. For example, when the ship sinks, right? For example, like Titanic, you know, where it sinks, it just sinks straight, you know, into the ocean, you know. But the Buddha says that there are Kassapa, you know, 5 detrimental things that lead to the decay and disappearance of the true Dhamma. And what are the 5? The Buddha says, here the bhikkhus, the bhikkhunis, and the male lay followers and the female lay followers dwell without reverence and deference towards the teacher. That's the first thing, you know, which means increasingly they lose respect, you know, and they do not actually respect, and they do not actually provide the kind of salutations and respect towards the teacher. And then they also, this is the first factor, and they also dwell without reverence and deference towards the Dhamma. They don't respect the Dhamma as anymore like they used to. And they also dwell without reverence and deference towards the Sangha, you know, because that becomes increasingly disrespectful to the Sangha. And they dwell without reverence and deference towards the training, you know, the training that the Buddha has actually put in place in terms of, you know, how you should go about training, in terms of, you know, make sure that you practice your patimokkha, observe your vinaya, you know, in terms of sense restraint, you know, in terms of indriya sambara, you know, in terms of, you know, how you should actually, have sati sampajanya, you know, then followed by, you know, you should actually, practice the jhanas, you know, and then, you know, meditate, you know, and there's sort of step-by-step training that the Buddha has, you know, set in place for the monks. Increasingly, they actually, you know, deviate from that training, you know, and say that, oh, you know, maybe it's not important anymore, you know, meditation is not so important, you know, we should do more social work, you know, we should go out and help others, you know, and let's meditate less is not important. So that is also, you know, the way the Buddha has foreseen that happening, you know. So increasingly monks do not place, you know, emphasis on training anymore, you know. And that's the 4th factor. And the last one is where they dwell without reference and deference towards what? Towards Samadhi, you know. See, the Buddha already has foreseen, even more than 2,500 years ago, that increasingly there will be less and less importance and being placed on samadhi, and not even about talking about importance. Some even disparage samadhi as something that's not necessary, and it's just something that's superfluous, something that's not even important. It doesn't lead you to liberation. You just need to apply mindfulness alone. Sati alone is important. You don't need to have samadhi. Why must you have samadhi? You just need to go in and just contemplate. So that is the kind of situation we have here. So the Buddha says, as long as you have this lack of deference, and reverence, you don't respect samadhi anymore, then the Buddha says that this is actually one of the 5 factors that the true Dhamma actually disappears. That the Buddha says that these are the 5 things, kasapa, that lead to the longevity, that lead to the true Dhamma to disappear, and to actually deteriorate. It's just like, the fake gold, that has actually appeared, and this is to the detriment of true gold. The Buddha mentioned in one of the, earlier in this sutta, you see, the Buddha talks about this counterfeit gold. When it arises, it actually results in this true gold being true gold disappear and also deteriorate in quality. So that's why you see that from this sutta, we can see that Buddha actually places a lot of emphasis on samadhi. In fact, in one of the suttas, the Buddha actually refers jhana, which is which is what the Buddha describes sama samadhi. Is any of the 4 jhanas, right? Sama samadhi, the Buddha says, in the Buddha says jhanas are actually the footprint of the 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓷. Means it's actually footprint of the Buddha itself, himself. So if you can actually practice jhana, then you are actually stepping in the footstep, or the Buddha himself, the Buddha, the 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓷. The Buddha says jhanas are actually the footprint. When the Buddha walks, there's a footprint of the Buddha, right? So the Buddha says that jhanas are actually the footprint of the 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓷. That's why the Buddha places a lot of emphasis on samadhi. And again, you see, we can see that in Essence 16.13. The Buddha says, if you actually do not respect and disparage samadhi, then it actually is one of 5 factors. It contributes to the disappearance of the true Dhamma. Okay, and again, you see in this AN 10.1, there is also this records this discussion, between the Buddha, the Blessed One, and also this Bhante, Venerable Ananda, and there was this one occasion, where Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One, and he actually asked the Buddha a series of questions, about, and of course, this discussion is about the importance of sila. Why is it important that we observe sila? The Venerable Ananda asked the Buddha, and of course, the Buddha, gave a very, very powerful Dhamma response to this, and it's a sequential response that builds up from sila all the way to attainment of arahantship. It actually builds up, in power. It goes up, from observing sila and all the way, up to attainment of liberation. So you can see here. I shall not go through everything, but I just want to highlight to you, the step part 8 here, where the question asked was, and what Bhante, is the purpose or benefit of samadhi? And the answer given by the Buddha is, the purpose and benefit of samadhi is the knowledge and vision of things as they really are. See, if you do not have samadhi, and the composure of mind and the unification of mind, how are you able to actually have the knowledge and vision of seeing things as they really are, the intrinsic nature of things? So the Buddha says, if you actually do not have this samadhi, then you cannot actually proceed and progress along the spiritual journey, because without samadhi, you cannot actually be able to know and see things as they really are, and knowing and seeing of things as they really are, actually is actually one of the prerequisites for one to even become a sotapanna, to be a stream enterer. You must be able to know and see, know and see what? Know and see how things are dependently arisen through causes and conditions, you see. So even if you don't have samadhi, how are you ever going to actually realize it with yourself, using your mind's eye to even see, this intrinsic nature of sankhara, of conditioned phenomena. So you see, samadhi is actually something that's critical, that's important, And once you have this purpose and benefit of things as they really are, then the Buddha says you'll be able to, that itself is a condition for you to develop disenchantment and dispassion, which is, nibbida and viraga. You're disenchanted with things, and you become dispassion. You do not cling, you do not crave for things anymore, because you have seen the underlying true nature of existence of things. And once you have this nibbida and viraga, then the Buddha says this leads to knowledge and vision of liberation. That's where you attain different stages of enlightenment, from sotapanna, all the way to arahantship. So you can see how critical this samadhi is. As you can see from this sutta, which is AN 10.1. You might want to just refer to this. It's a very important sutta about samadhi. And as I mentioned earlier, this Samma Samadhi, is actually one of the Noble Eightfold Path factors, which is the 8th path factor in the Noble Eightfold Path. And in this AN 5.15, the Buddha actually again teaches the Dhamma about what? About the 5 spiritual faculties, like I mentioned just now, right? The 5 spiritual faculties, or 5 spiritual powers, Saddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya, right? And you see here, the Buddha actually describes what? Part number 4, which I highlighted here, and where is the power of concentration to be seen? The power of samadhi. The power of samadhi is to be seen in the 4 jhanas, you see. So the Buddha is very, very certain and very firm, in terms of what Samma Samadhi is, which is actually 4 jhanas, and it's not, where the Buddha actually selects the high standard because he's the Buddha, therefore he teaches jhanas. But if you are not aspiring to be Buddhahood, for Buddhahood, and you just want to be an arahant, or even a Pachika Buddha, then no need. You just need to practice something quite close to jhanas. The Buddha never actually teaches anything about anything close to jhanas. The Buddha always makes reference to Samma Samadhi as what? The 4 jhanas, So that's why, we must be clear in our mind. 4 jhanas, are the building blocks of Samma Samadhi, and Samma Samadhi is the Noble Eightfold Path. And, and even for you to be a Sotapanna, the Buddha, in one of the suttas in SN 55, I think, the Buddha, this Venerable Sariputta actually says, that this Sotapanna is one that actually possesses the 8 path factors, and of course one of the 8 path factors is actually what? Samma Samadhi, so even for Sotapanna, he would actually have actually cultivated any of the 4 jhanas. It doesn't have to be it doesn't mean that you must have 4 jhanas before you can become enlightened. Even for you to be even if you have just the first jhana, but if you're able to penetrate into the in the intrinsic nature of existence just by using first jhana, in the Jhana Sutta, the Buddha says you can become an arahant just by using just the first jhana. It doesn't mean that you need to have 4 jhanas in order to become an arahant. So we can see here the Buddha always invariably describes Samma Samadhi as the 4 jhanas. So we must actually be mindful of that. It's not something like close to jhana, or or maybe on the verge of jhana. Then you can use that to be liberated. The Buddha inevitably always refers to 4 jhanas. And you can see here, in terms of AN 3.19 as well, the Buddha here actually, gave a discourse, and this discourse, the Buddha is using an example of a shopkeeper, which is actually very interesting. You see, the shopkeeper, is incapable of acquiring wealth, not yet acquired, or increase the wealth already acquired. If you have the 3 factors here, if the shopkeeper has these 3 factors, then this shopkeeper is not able to acquire wealth or to increase his wealth. Here, the shopkeeper does not diligently apply himself to his work in the morning, in the middle, or in the evening. So the Buddha says, if this shopkeeper doesn't diligently apply himself, means he doesn't actually put in the effort to look after his shop, to look after his goods, track his inventory, look after his cash flow, and also collect the debt, from the debtors, the receivables, he need to collect and all this. So if you don't look after the shop well, and also to make sure you to prevent the shoplifters, from stealing your shop goods from your shop, if you don't apply these factors, then the Buddha says you cannot, this shopkeeper will not be able to increase his wealth, nor will he be able to safeguard the wealth that he has acquired. So this example, the Buddha says, so too, if a bhikkhu is incapable, if he actually has these three factors, he's not capable of achieving a wholesome state, not yet attained, or increasing a wholesome state already attained. So the Buddha says, if this bhikkhu doesn't have these three factors, the same like this shopkeeper, then he's actually incapable of achieving kusala, dhamma, wholesome state, and he's not able to increase the kusala dhamma, that he's really attained. What are these three factors? Here the bhikkhu does not diligently apply himself to an object of samadhi in the morning, in the middle, and in the evening. You see, if you have these three factors, this bhikkhu is not able to achieve, a wholesome state, and not able to increase and strengthen the wholesome state he has attained. So the Buddha says, of course, this sutta is actually for, for the monks, that you should actually have this object of samadhi in you, whether morning, day, or night, but you can apply that, to the lay people as well, So like for us, we should also emulate, what the monks or the bhikkhus, they actually practice in terms of having this object of samadhi. So for us, we can also have an object of samadhi. How do we do that? We can actually watch our mind. That's our object of samadhi, right? We can always watch, our mind, whether there actually arises any kilesas, any lobha, dosa, moha, like what the Buddha teaches in this MN10 in terms of the 4 establishments of mindfulness. There's a Satipatthana Sutta, right? The MN10, the Buddha talks about the 4 foundations or the 4 establishments. One of them is what? Chitta, Chitta Nupassana, where you must always watch your mind, whether there's any greed, greed. Of course, greed doesn't just lobha doesn't just include greed. It can also be dislike. Even a slight dislike also is actually greed, also lobha, So you must check whether there's like, lobha means anything you like, anything you have a preference for is also liking, is also lobha. Then any dosa, for example, whether anger arises in you, or whether you have this fury or anger in you, that you want to lash out, then you need to watch your mind, has where that anger has arisen in you. So you must be mindful that anger has actually emerged and and appeared in your mind, and even down to the level of having a dislike for something or somebody, I dislike this person, then that this dosa has arisen in you, lobha, dosa, moha. Moha is actually in terms of what delusion, where you actually assign an I or mind, to everything you see, like for example, you ascribe everything to me, mine, and myself, or you actually look at another person, another thing, you actually think about me, that there's always me, mine, and myself, always the I in there. Then that this delusion has actually crept up in your mind. So the Buddha says you must have this object, watch your mind. How does your mind react to all the external objects? Whenever something you like, you see, then that, this liking has arisen, or I have this greed. I want to actually go for this movie, I want to go, taste this Italian food or French food, people say that, the Thai food is really scrumptious, I actually want to go. Or then you find that, wow, you find that you have this greed arising in you, then you can't sleep, every day you think about that, and then you think about, I want to go and travel, to all these places, these countries, where where it snows, all the things that you can do, and so all these are actually impinging on your mind, on this greed. And then you have this anger, anything that impinges on you, then you feel really displeasure, dislike, anger, I don't like this, I don't like that, I really hate it, for example, the traffic light, turns red just when you're about to cross the junction. Why must it happen? Why must it always be red, before I can cross the junction? Well, then you can feel the fury, arising in you, right? That because of that, I'm going to be late, So you can watch yourself, anger is arisen. Then try to just watch it, and then put your attention to somewhere else, and then do some samatha first and quiet your mind before you apply vipassana, and look at the intrinsic nature of the anger, and so that's why the Buddha says you must always apply this samadhi, you must have a samadhi object, so and one of the excellent object of samadhi is what is your mind, watch your mind, what is the mind reacting, how is it reacting now, is there anything unwholesome or not? Just like the Buddha says, you must always watch your complexion in a bowl of clear water, see whether there's any blemish in your face or not. Or is there a dirt here? Or is there anything there? Is there any black marks here and there, then they should try and quickly remove it by washing your face, right? So the same thing, if you actually see that, something unwholesome has arisen in your mind, then you must actually put in effort to eradicate it, to uproot it, to actually extinguish it, And of course, first of all, before you can do anything, you must watch your mind, right? Because if you don't watch your mind, you don't even know that you're angry, then, you actually start doing a lot of things that you may regret later, right? You may start scolding, a lot of things, and you must scold your friends or your colleagues, and because of that, your friendship, is soured, Wow, why? Why? All because of what? All because of lobha, dosa, moha, all because of all these defilements. And the underlying reason is because, you don't apply samadhi, you don't apply this collectedness of mind. That's why you see samadhi is not looking at an object where you can see light, nimitta and all this, it's not. It's about being able to compose yourself, being able to collect your mind, being able to watch your mind, that itself, is actually the sutta jhana that the Buddha is teaching, that you must have the unification and collection of mind for you to actually be able to observe and see, what has happened to you in your mind. So that's why you see samadhi is so important, as seen from AN 3.19. And again, see, okay, now that we know this samadhi is important, right? Okay, now I'll go back to the earlier question which I asked you, right? So now we know that samadhi is important. So how should this samadhi be practiced? So that's the next question we need to ask ourselves, right? Okay, because nowadays, we have got so many different schools of Buddhism that actually promulgate different teachings in terms of samadhi, in terms of jhana, that I think we ourselves are, I think we also we are all really confused, and perplexed. We really don't know who to follow anymore. It's just too many. And then whoever the teacher I follow, I just assume that that's correct and just do it. I don't care anymore. I mean, there's a lot of attitude that Buddhists actually have nowadays. I mean, I know this meditation teacher is very famous and he has taught. He's so well known and so renowned. So I'll take it that whatever he teaches me is correct. So there's also one danger, that we potential danger, So you might be just going the wrong path, or maybe practicing going, off track, and you may find yourself lost, in the jungle, or the forest, and you don't actually reach the destination that you want, So that's why the teacher is actually very important, and to find the right teacher to actually teach you, and also to refer to the suttas, So whether you find the right teacher or not, at the end of the day, it's your own karma. If you find the wrong teacher, it's also something cannot be helped, it's your own karma as well, So, but of course, you must always refer to what the Buddha actually has taught in the suttas as well. So you can see from this AN 4.41, which is actually the primary sutta that I've actually selected for this talk, you can see from here, see the Buddha actually in this discourse is actually it's a very, very interesting and also powerful sutta, I find. You see here in 4.41, he actually teaches the bhikkhus by saying, monks, there is these 4 developments of samadhi, and which 4, and the Buddha actually enumerates them. This is the development of concentration, then develop and pursuit leads to pleasant abiding in the here and now. Okay, so what do you actually what can you surmise from here, in this samadhi that leads to pleasant abiding? Pleasant abiding, is what? Is the jhanas, right? Right? Because the arupa attainments are the peaceful abidings, but the jhanas are the pleasant abiding. So when you read the sutta, when the Buddha makes reference to pleasant abiding here and now, the Buddha is talking about the jhanas, And then there's also the development of samadhi that leads to the attainment of knowledge and vision, Okay, this is the second samadhi that the Buddha says that can be developed, And then there is the development of samadhi, that leads to just what? To mindfulness and alertness. Means what? To sati sampajanya, Means it leads you to mindfulness. It sharpens your mindfulness and your clear comprehension, your alertness. Your alertness, it makes you more alert, in terms of your samadhi, it makes you more it actually enhances your mindfulness, your sati, and also your alertness, which is here is actually the sati sampajanya, This is the third samadhi. And the fourth samadhi, the Buddha says, this is the development of samadhi that leads to the ending of the affluence, the asava, the ending of the affluence. So ending of the affluence, what? Nibbana, right? You actually attain arahantship, and you actually end all the flowing, of becoming, the flows of becoming, the ending of the affluence of this flows, this affluence, which is what the Buddha calls the asavas. In terms of the Buddha describes this as the affluence, the flows of becoming. And then of course, then after ascribing this four samadhi, right? Okay, and of course, the Buddha first of all describes the Buddha talks about the jhanas, okay. I will not actually go into here because here the four jhanas the Buddha actually describes, what the four jhanas are, and they're basically very they are actually very clear descriptions as to what the four jhanas are, starting from first to fourth jhana in terms of vitakka, vichara, and in terms of the the happiness, the joy, the rapture, and then all this, right? So all these, and the Buddha actually describes in terms of the four jhanas, and the second part, is the Buddha talks about the samadhi that leads to the attainment of knowledge and vision. This is the case where a monk attains to the perception of light and is resolved in the perception of light. At any hour of the day, day for him is the same as night, night is the same as day. So which means he actually practice samadhi, by actually having this vision of light in his mind, such that even if it's at night time, there is the light in him is actually very bright. He develops this bright developing the light in his mind. That is the basis of the samadhi. And by means of an awareness open and unhampered, he develops a brightened mind, which means that there is this brightness in his mind, just like daytime, like the sunlight. So whether it is the night or day, there's this bright sunlight in his mind. This is the development of concentration that leads to attainment of knowledge and vision. So here actually, it is actually a description of those monks that are actually practicing the psychic power, right? The psychic power, you need to practice about this concentration on the light, the vision of light in you, So the Buddha describes the second samadhi. And what I want to actually highlight is actually and what is important I want to highlight is actually the third and the fourth samadhi that the Buddha actually describes here. So let us read this very carefully, and he says here, what is the development and concentration, development of samadhi that leads to mindfulness and alertness. This is the case, where feelings are known to the monks as they arise, known as they persist, known as they subside. For example, you have this pleasant, unpleasant feeling, right? You just your samadhi, you develop it by just noting the pleasant feeling has arisen, it persists, and it goes away, they subside. And then the same thing goes for the the other five aggregates, the perceptions, you just actually contemplate, as they arise, as they persist, as they subside, and then you also contemplate in terms of your thoughts, your sankhara, right? You also actually just you just contemplate them as they arise, they persist, and they subside, which means that you meditate in a very passive manner, means that you don't actually get involved, you just watch. For example, there is this maybe greed, anger has arisen in me, or maybe an unpleasant feeling has arisen in me, or maybe a thought has arisen in me. Then you just do nothing but just watch. It comes, it stays, it goes. It comes, it stays, it goes. You just watch. So the Buddha says that if you develop this samadhi, then you are just basically sharpening your sati and your alertness only. means that you're sharpening your mindfulness, and your alertness. Means your mind is actually very alert, is able to detect things because you're sharpening your mindfulness, to be able to be able to know what happens. Then so the Buddha says, if you practice in this way, then you are sharpening your mindfulness. But the Buddha says, the fourth samadhi is when you develop and pursue it, it leads to the ending of the affluence, which is actually what we want, right? The ending of the asavas, means once you end the asavas, in terms of, for example, the in the asavas, in terms of becoming, in terms of greed, in terms of the ignorance, So once you actually end all these asavas, right, then of course you become an arahant, and you actually end the cycle of samsara, right? This is actually what we want. So the Buddha says, how should the samadhi be practiced in order to end the affluence? This is a case where a monk remains focused on the arising and falling with reference to the 5 clinging aggregates, such as form, such as origination, such as passing away. Means you look at the 5 aggregates in terms of form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. Means for every aggregate, you don't just watch it come and go, but you must also understand what is the why does it arise, and why does it pass away, how does it arise and how does it pass away, what factors actually cause it to arise and what factors cause it to pass away. So the Buddha says that if you practice this, what are you achieving? You are achieving actually the samadhi that enables you to watch and see how things arise and pass away through what? Through causes and conditions, right? That actually result in you realizing that all sankharas are dependently arisen. They arise because of what? They are arise because of causes and conditions, and they are actually dependently fabricated. It's just like a mirage, right? That you think that it's actually a self there, but actually, if you're able to see how things arise through this interplay of causes and conditions, then you are able to see actually what you have been clinging so far on this thing that you call I, my, myself is nothing but an illusion. It's nothing, but non-self. There's actually no self to it. So if you actually cling on this self, then you're setting up yourself up, for dukkha, because this is actually this whatever that actually dependently arisen will inevitably cease and pass away. Once the causes and conditions change or disappear, they will definitely pass away. So the Buddha says, if you're able to see this chain of, how sankhara arises through causes and conditions, then you're developing the right samadhi. Then the samadhi is actually where you're able to develop, this knowing and seeing, of how things arise through causes and conditions. Because once you see how things arise through causes and conditions, you see that there's this whatever that actually that has arisen through all this interplay of these factors and causes and conditions. There's actually no self to it. There's non-self. That's why the Buddha says, if you are able to see this, you are able to see the 5 aggregates are actually like a dart, like a boil, like a disease, like an alien, like it's nothing worth clinging to, like it really is something so it's nothing to cling to, nothing for you to be attached to at all, it's something that you should just let go and just dispense with. That's what this Buddha says. If you're able to see this non-self, so this non-self is what anatta, and anatta, right, is actually the crown jewel of the teachings of the Buddha. Nowhere in any spiritual teachings by any teachers actually teach about non-self. In fact, all the teachers during the Buddha's time, they do not actually subscribe to non-self. They actually teach about self, about how to be with the Brahma. You should actually cultivate yourself to be with the Brahma for eternal happiness. There's always this self that they actually emphasize. But the Buddha, he has actually realized the truth, fully enlightened, so he's able to see the intrinsic nature of this, so which is actually non-self. So the Buddha says, if you practice samadhi by just watching things come and go, then you are actually just sharpening your mindfulness and your sati, but you are not actually, uprooting your affluence and your kilesas. You are not doing that. The only way that you're able to do this, you uproot the kilesa is by actually developing samadhi, by actually watching, how your five aggregates arise, through causes and conditions and how they're depending on reason, not just by looking at just come and go, then you are just actually looking at impermanence, but you're not looking at anatta, you're looking at anicca only, but not anatta. So that's why this is very important. That's why the Buddha describes this four concentration is, you practice the jhana, but don't just stop at jhana, Once you develop jhana, it doesn't mean that, oh, I've developed jhanas and I've already attained nibbana. No, jhanas are just a stepping stone towards achieving the wisdom, the realization. So you must actually go one step. The first samadhi is actually jhana, but you must actually go one step and develop the samadhi by actually that enables you to know and see how things arise through causes and conditions, and how they are depending on reason. Because once you see that, you're able to penetrate into the Dhamma, and you're able to actually see that there's no self to it. That's why the Sotapanna is able to attain this eradication of the first factor of Sakkaya Ditthi, because Sakkaya Ditthi means what? Identity view. But because the Sotapanna is able to see, through this development of this contemplation of non-self, he sees the five aggregates by looking at, these causes and conditions, he's able to actually penetrate into this Sakkaya Ditthi and able to eradicate the factor, of this self-view. Then he becomes, very, his faith in the Buddha becomes a confirmed, verified faith. It doesn't take him effort to just place faith in the Buddha, because he knows that it's actually intrinsically true. That's why it's actually called avijja pasada. It's not just the normal faith, but it's actually the unshakable faith through confirmation and verification through personal experience, And because of that, the Silabbata Paramasa also falls away, because, he doesn't actually subscribe to rituals anymore, because he knows everything is dependently a reason. So that's why this AN 4.41 is a very important sutta that, we must actually take note of, and practice accordingly. Don't just watch things come and go, but go one step further by looking at the anatta, of sankhara, So again, in this AN 5.28, where the Buddha actually teaches again a very powerful Dhamma here. He talks about the five factors, right concentration, about this Samma Samadhi. There are actually these noble five factors of Samma Samadhi, Listen and I'll speak, the Buddha says. Of course, here the Buddha talks about the four jhanas, okay, the Buddha, that is a hallmark of Samma Samadhi, four jhanas. There's no other things other than four jhanas. And you see towards the end, that's the four factors. The fifth factor is what? The fifth factor of Samma Samadhi is actually, where you see the number 5 here, the bhikkhu has grasped well the object of reviewing, attending to it well, and he is sustaining it well, penetrating well with wisdom, So it's not just about developing the four jhanas, but you must also penetrate it using wisdom, And just as one person might look upon another, standing might look upon sitting down might look upon lying down, means you must actually look at the object very closely, very carefully, and you must actually grasp well the object of reviewing, attending well, and penetrate with wisdom. This is the fifth development of the noble five factors of right samadhi, So the Buddha says, other than the four factors, you must have also the fifth factor, The fifth factor is you must apply wisdom. And how do you apply wisdom? Is straight back to AN 4.41, the fourth way of practicing samadhi is when you actually contemplate how your sankharas, your five aggregates arise through causes and conditions, and how they arise through interplay of these conditions that result in dependently a reason, Then only you see that actually your five aggregates is non-self, It's actually nothing, It's just an illusion, just like banana leaves, the banana tree trunk. You think the tree trunk is actually very solid, but once you peel off the banana slip one by one, when ultimately there's nothing there, It's just layers and layers of the tree trunk, and you think there's a self, but once you remove it and dissect it, how they arise through causes and conditions, actually there's nothing there. The Buddha says, it's just like a mirage. You actually see in the desert, there's a lot of this mirage, of a well, of water, but actually if you look at the well, if you look far away in the horizon, there is this water, right? But once you go there, maybe on your camel, you know, you go there and you see on the desert, actually there's no water there, you know, but from the far it looks like as though there's an oasis there, but actually there's nothing. So we have been fooled by this self for so many aeons in this samsara, that's why, you know, we keep going round and round like a dog on the leash, going around on a solid pole. You're going round and round, you know, from one existence to another in different realms of existence, you know, all the way from the as human, you know, to the heavens, to the hells, you know, as animals. Why? Because of what? Because of this ignorance of this self, you know. That's why the Buddha says, for you to eradicate this, you must have this five-factored samadhi. And this five-factored samadhi, of course, the four jhanas, and the fifth one is actually where you must contemplate with wisdom, you know. And that's where AN 4.41 comes in. You shouldn't just look at things come and go. For example, you know, you look at unpleasant feelings and reason, you know, then you say, okay, just look at it, come, then watch it go, you know. Or your anger is a reason, just watch it and go, you know, be passive. The Buddha says, if you watch it, then you are just sharpening your mindfulness, you know, but you are not uprooting the asavas or the kilesas, and you are not getting out from samsara. So that's why in this sutta it's very important, you know, AN 5.28, you know. Okay, just now from AN 4.41, right, you know, where we mentioned the Buddha actually talks about, you know, how you should actually contemplate, you know, jhana, you know, by looking at, you know, how your sankharas are dependent on reason, right, through causes and conditions. And in the suttas, you can see many suttas that actually highlight this. I just give you some examples in the SN 22.5, where the Buddha talks about, you know, he actually asked the bhikkhus, develop samadhi, you know. A bhikkhu who has samadhi understand things as they really are, you know. So the Buddha actually encourages and tells the bhikkhus that this samadhi is very important, you know, that you must develop samadhi. And how does he actually should develop this samadhi? The Buddha here says you must develop it by actually looking at origin and passing away, you know, of form and your five aggregates. So the Buddha says here, origin and passing away, you know, means you must know how does it arise and how does it pass away, you know, through causes and conditions, you know. So you see 22.5, and you again 35.99, you know, Samyutta Nikaya also, the Buddha also talks about samadhi should be practiced in that way, you know, by just, it's not just looking at how things come and go, but also looking at how they arise through causes and conditions, you know. Okay, so you can refer to the other suttas, you know. Actually, there are a lot of suttas, you know, that the Buddha has actually described how samadhi should be practiced. You know, another one is SN 35.101. You know, you may refer to it when you have the time. You see, and in this SN 43.4, you see, it's very important, it's very interesting. You know, the Buddha talks about this emptiness concentration. You know, what is emptiness? Emptiness is what? Sunyata, right? The Mahayanis actually emphasizes a lot on this emptiness, you know, even Tibetans as well, you know. This sunyata is something very important as the path to liberation, you know. So this emptiness, some emptiness samadhi, this emptiness, you know, of some emptiness on samadhi on emptiness. The Buddha says, and what bhikkhus is the path leading to the unconditioned, you know. What is the path leading to nibbana? Unconditioned means nibbana, right? The Buddha says here, the emptiness concentration, the signless concentration, and the undirected concentration. This is called the path leading to nibbana, you know. So we see the Buddha says here, the emptiness concentration means is actually what? Concentration on emptiness, on sunyata, you know. And how do you see emptiness? You see emptiness by looking at how sankharas arise through causes and conditions. That's why they are empty. There's no self to it, you know. Once the causes and conditions change or they disappear, this sankhara, you know, that you're observing also goes away, you know. So intrinsically, everything is empty. Like what the Buddha says, you know, everything, you know, everything, you know, is actually, you know, intrinsically empty, you know. So that's why the Buddha says everything is empty and every sankhara is actually impermanent. That's why, you know, this emptiness concentration is actually something that's actually very important for us to practice, like this emptiness, this you know, emptiness concentration, you know, which is actually on voidness, and also it's actually it is actually sunyata. So the only way you can practice this is actually when you can see, how things arise through causes and conditions. So you can see for again, from in other suttas 36.1, you see time and time again, the Buddha talks about all this. When you see feelings, you must see how feelings origin, and how they cease. Okay, so the other suttas, I'll just briefly just tell you AN 3.183 and 352. You may just want to take a look as well, and this SN 43.12 again, the Buddha actually highlights, about this Samādhi, you see, what is the Buddha says, what is the path leads to the Nibbana, you see, and the Buddha in part 6, the Buddha says here, the bhikkhu said, and bhikkhus, what is the path leading to Nibbana? Emptiness, concentration, means Samādhi on what? Samādhi on emptiness. And the only way you can actually attain this Samādhi in emptiness is when you actually realize how things arise through causes and conditions, how they're dependently arisen, then only then you're able to attain this emptiness concentration. And once you have this emptiness concentration, then you also have the silence concentration and the undirected concentration, You see, so that's why, when you practice Samadhi, you must always practice in such a way that you're able to see non-self, anatta, which is actually what the Buddha teaches, is the way leading to Nibbana. And you can see from SN 35.55 again, the Buddha says the only way to uproot the fetters is when you see, the 5 aggregates as non-self, He says here, the monks ask the Buddha, say, Bhante, how should one know and how should one see for the fetters to be uprooted? You see, then the Buddha actually then tells, okay, bhikkhus, for you to actually uproot the fetters, you must see the 5 aggregates as non-self, Again, anatta has been emphasized again by the Blessed One, And then in SN 35.56 to 59 as well, the Buddha again tells the monks, the only way you can actually abandon the taints is when you actually see the 5 aggregates as non-self, which is anatta. The Buddha never talks about just anicca. The Buddha says that you must actually contemplate anatta. That's why in SN 22.122, when Venerable Sariputta tells Venerable 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓷𝓷 that in order for one to attain the stream entry, one must actually contemplate the 5 aggregates as what? As non-self, as stressful, as a disease, as a cancer, as an arrow, as painful and affliction. You must see these 5 aggregates as non-self. Then it is possible, that this virtuous monk is able to attain a fruit of stream entry. So in order for you to attain Sotapanna, you must practice this non-self contemplation to developing the 4th type of Samadhi in AN 4.41, not the 3rd type, but the 4th type. So then the next question is, how do you practice this emptiness Samadhi, by by aggregating the 5 aggregates? The Buddha says for you to practice to contemplate the 5 aggregates as non-self, in MN 148, the Buddha says you can practice it through these 6 sets of 6, by looking at it in terms of when, for example, when an object comes into contact with you, how should you contemplate? For example, when you see something unpleasant, then you can, for example, that anger arises in you, then you actually then contemplate, how does the anger arise? Oh, the anger arises because of unpleasant feeling, and the unpleasant feeling arises, because of what? Because of the thoughts, why must they do this? You're not happy, and the thoughts, how does it arise? Oh, because of perception. And how does the perception arise? Oh, it's because of contact. And how does the contact arise? Oh, it's because of maybe ear consciousness or eye consciousness, and how does the consciousness arise? Or it's because of the eye getting in contact with the form, or the ear getting in contact with the sound, So if you contemplate it this way, the Buddha says that through the 6 sense doors, you're able to see the 5 aggregates, right? Because by contemplating, the anger, you're contemplating sankhara. By contemplating, the perception, for example, you hear something or you see something, you perceive it, perception is there. Then, for example, you also perceive in terms of the consciousness, because the contact, right? And you also are able to see, the form, and your eye, which is also the form. So you are able to contemplate form, feelings, perceptions, the sankhara, and also, and also the volitional formations, right? Perception and volitional formations, and also consciousness, So the five things have been perceived, by you by just contemplating the five aggregates through the six sense doors. So the same thing happens, the same Dhamma is actually taught by this Venerable Dandaka in MN 146 as well, where, remember, I've spoken this a lot during my Dhamma discussions, about how Venerable Dandaka taught the bhikkhunis to contemplate about this fire, this fire that you light up a candle or an oil lamp, right, is there really a self to it, You have to contemplate, oh, this fire is there because of what, it is there because of the wick, and because of the oil in the oil lamp, so if the wick, actually disappears or is actually used up, or if the oil is actually used up, do you think the fire will still be there? So the fire actually disappears. So that's why this fire is what is actually dependently arisen through causes and conditions. There's actually nothing independent, of causes and conditions. And this fire, you cannot say that there's a self to it. When you say there's a self, means what? Means it does not depend on any factors at all. No, it arises there by itself without any supporting conditions. So if you are able to see this non-self principle and apply it to contemplate your five aggregates, then you're on the right track, towards attaining, Sotapadhi, even all the way to arahantship, So you see, the Buddha has actually outlined such a clear path for us to practice, in terms of developing Samadhi. And even Venerable Ananda, if you see from SN 22.83, he actually became a Sotapanna, by using the same way of practice, by looking at the five aggregates, how they are arise through causes and conditions, through dependent on conditions, how they're fabricated. That's when he actually penetrated into the Dhamma. Again, you see this this non-self concentration, Samadhi, development of Samadhi by analyzing this non-self, it's so powerful and so important for us to practice. And like I mentioned to you, in order for you to practice, you must always watch your mind. Always watch what is actually happening to your mind, how it responds to the external objects, your sense objects, whether there's any lobha, dosa, moha. And in SN 35.152, the Buddha says, if you can watch your mind alone, you can become an arahant in this life. So watching the mind is so important. But of course, there are some traditions, like for example, there are some Thai traditions that teach that watching the mind is actually reserved only for the anagamis, which is not right, because the Buddha never says watching the mind is for anagamis. If you look at this SN 35.152, the Buddha never qualifies that only when you are an anagami that you can watch your mind. Otherwise, if you're a putujjana or not even an anagami, then you cannot watch your mind. The Buddha never says that. And even then also, anagami has really eradicated greed and hatred, So what can you watch? So the anagami also has got no greed and hatred to watch as well, right? So that's why watching the mind is very important. It's like the peak of the roof, If you don't actually build the peak of your roof properly, then the whole house actually becomes soggy and wet when it rains. So it's just like the mind. If you don't guard it and well, and you don't have self-restraint and sense restraint, then then you're not able to contemplate whatever that arises in your mind well, and that's where you commit a lot of unwholesome things. So in this talk itself, basically, I just like to highlight to you that the Buddha in the suttas, right? If you actually read the suttas, the Buddha actually never talks about just looking at anicca alone and that's enough. If you actually look at SN 22.40, the Buddha actually teaches the Dhamma, by looking at three things, anicca, dukkha, and anatta, So in SN 22.40, the Buddha says, in order for you to practice in accordance with the Dhamma, you must actually contemplate impermanence, in the five aggregates. Okay, that is anicca, But the Buddha never stops at anicca, The Buddha says you must also contemplate dukkha, which is suffering, right? And then followed by anatta, So anatta actually is the one, that actually is actually the ultimate, the culmination of the Buddha's teaching. So that's why my objective of sharing the Dhamma today, is essentially to actually share with you, what the Buddha has actually taught in terms of how we should actually cultivate Samadhi, as meditators. It's very important for us to actually know, whether we are practicing the right way, instead of disregarding, what the sutta say, and you just have this view that, whatever my teacher has taught me, it must be correct. Of course, we must listen to the teachers as students, but we must also remember the 4 great references that the Buddha has taught us. Whatever that you hear from a bhikkhu or even a very renowned bhikkhu, you must always put it to the test by checking against what the Buddha has taught in the suttas, in the discourses. And if it's in line, then you should actually adopt it. If it's not in line, then you should just discard it and ignore it. So we need to, we all our responsibility, to the Buddha, to actually do that part, because the Buddha has, through his great effort, that he actually has taught us the true Dhamma, and we must have this sense of responsibility to know, whether what we are practicing is right. Otherwise, you are actually you're actually missing the boat now when we are now born in the human realm, where we have this opportunity to practice, and yet you do not want to know, exactly whether what I'm practicing is actually correct based on what the Buddha has taught. Then you might end up, not even attaining Sotapanna, or in this very life. Then your life as a human being, it has been lived in vain. It's like you're wasted. Such a precious opportunity for you to actually practice the Dhamma as taught by the Buddha, but instead you practice it in the wrong way, or in off track, then you have missed out a good opportunity. Then you don't even attain Sotapatti, then and you keep on migrating, and traveling around this samsara, where you might end up, in the Apaya woeful plains, where you stay there for millions of years, as animals and health. So can you imagine you lost out on the opportunity? So I will advise all of you, to actually, study, what the Buddha actually has taught in the suttas. The Buddha has, in fact, laid out a very clear path for us to practice. You see so many suttas telling us about contemplating non-self, how you should practice. The Satipatthana Sutta, the Anapanasati Sutta. When you practice breathing, how you should practice breathing. You practice breathing. Samatha, and then also vipassana, by actually opening up your 6 sense doors and investigate, how your mind reacts to 6 sense doors. It's all there. It's a matter of whether you really want to go in and study and check, a checkpoint, whether what you are doing is right or wrong. So I hope I have achieved, the objective, from this Dhamma sharing today, so that you put us, in you actually sound a bell of warning to us, that do not just be like a horse, with a blinkered horse, that doesn't care about other things. I just run only. I don't care, I mean, I don't care where I'm going. I just run. My master asked me to run, I just run. So you shouldn't be like that. You should be more inquisitive. You should investigate more, and find out from various teachers, whether whether what you practice is correct, because that is a very, very important step. Make sure that you're on the right path towards liberation. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Brother Loo, for today's sharing. Now let's dedicate those merits that we have accrued from listening to the Dhamma and the Puja this morning. Now let us compose our minds as we chant. Akasatha cha Bhummatha Devanaga Mahidika Punyang Tang Anumoditva Chiram Rakantu Loka Sasanang Ettavata cha Amhehi Sampadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Deva Sabbe Bhuta Sabbe Satta Numodantu Sabba Sampatti Siddhya. Dedication of marriage to the departed. Edang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Edang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Edang me nyati Nang hotu. Excuse. Sukita hontu nyatayo. And aspirations. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo. Satang samagamo hotu yavanippana pattiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you everyone for watching. For other videos, please visit the links below. Bye bye for now. See you again next week.